Hey guys, today I want to share with you how I made my very first piece of Intarsia. If you're not familiar with Intarsia, is where you make pictures out of wood. And this one, it's wet. I just finished putting an oil on it. But this was my very first time ever trying this technique. I cut all these pieces with scroll saw, except the frame, of course. The frame is just traditionally done on the miter saw and the table saw. But look at this beautiful picture, and it was so easy to make, very fun, and I want to share with you how I did it. I purchased this pattern on Etsy, and I'm not affiliated with the person that sold it or anything like that, but it was a really easy pattern to do. It said it was easy and it was great for beginners, so that's why I purchased it, and I just had to try it. So if you want to see how I made this, stay tuned. Now here is the pattern. It will look something like this. Well, hopefully it's gonna look something like that. What I did so far, I cut my backer board. This is what all the pieces is going to get glued onto. And this is some Baltic birch 1/8 inch plywood. So I already cut that one to size, and I will stain it dark brown so it kind of goes in with the project. Then for the water, we have the water layers that goes underneath that will be glued onto this backer board. I'm going to use mahogany, 1/4 inch mahogany, and I already taped the patterns to it. I'm gonna take it to the scroll saw and I am going to cut the water parts. So let's go do that. All right, so I cut all the water parts. I put them here the way they would go. And this is my backer board. This is the one I need to stain. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm just gonna use an alcohol-based stain. I'll show you exactly what I'll use. Let me just set this up. I'll be using this color tone and tobacco brown. This is used for staining guitars, but it works really well. I like it. I've been using it, so that's what I'm using. The color is very pretty too. Now I've never used it on plywood, so we'll see how that goes. First I have to remove all the tape, and then I need some denatured alcohol. I like to work with this alcohol based because it dries so quickly. So I'll put some denatured alcohol in this little cup. I don't assume I need too much, maybe that much. And then we'll drop a few drops of this stain. And let's see what we got. I'm using some of these magic eraser sponges. They work really well for putting stain. So let's see. And that looks good. It's very dark, but that's okay. And that looks pretty good to me. And let's see what we have here. I have to take the tapes off my water. I have no idea how I'm going to shape this water. Like I said, I've never done this before. I should have probably watched some YouTube videos on how it's done. There's not a lot of instructions on how to do it, but it does say it's a good beginner project, so I'm a beginner. I should be able to do it, right? Now for shaping, I'll be using this little rotary sander. You can use a Dremel if you have it. This is what I will be using, and I like this because it has a pedal and it has very different speeds I can work with, and also I can choose if I want the direction to go clockwise or counterclockwise of the sanding, so that's why I'm gonna use this one. All right, there's our water, and what I will do now, I'll start rounding the top part towards the back part. That's what I'll do. So I'll use my rotary tool that right now it's tangled in here. I don't know what I did. There we go. Now after I cut all the pieces, it was time to shape them. I started with the sails, and the way I did it is first I thinned out all the corners. So I went to the corners and make sure that it's tapering and removing the bulk of the material from the corners. Then I went to the sides and, you know, kind of rounded over the sides. Then after that, I used the spindle sander, the smaller part of the belt, and put that curvature on the inside so it looks like the wind is blowing in the sails and they're all puffed up. So that's how I shape them. Then, of course, hand sand them tons, and you know, until I liked the shape that I wanted them to be. Because my sails were really stark white, it was aspen I used for it. It was a little bit too bright and too much of a contrast, so I diluted a little bit of light brown dye. You saw me doing that, and just some water, and then gave them a wash just to darken them a little bit. I let them dry, and then I sand them. Most of the dye I sanded off, just leave it a little bit in some spots, and then in the grain, just so it has that weathered look, because even though when you look at the sailboat, they look white from the distance, in fact, they're not that white. I mean, you have to think about that material being in the weather and the wind and rain and so on. So it's more like a creamy beige and, you know, has some weathered look to it. So I wanted to achieve that with my sails, and that's why I put that dye in there. Here is where we are so far. You saw me putting a stain, a very diluted stain. I just took a few drops of a light brown stain water base and I mixed it with more water and I applied it to the sails. I let it dry and then I sand it down, and that just gives it a little bit of grain and it makes it look a little bit more aged, kind of like, you know, the sails has been out in the weather for a long time. They're not pure white. They have to have a little bit of discoloration and color. And I think that just makes it a little bit more interesting. You can see it close up. Because this wood, this is aspen, it just does not have a lot of grain in it. I don't think it's focusing. Anyway, that's what I did to the sails. Then I wasn't sure exactly how to go about frame, but I decided to put a frame. So I made a very simple frame, nothing really complicated, just, 45 degrees, cut a frame, and I already put inside, I glued a piece of 1/8 inch plywood, and this is the Baltic birch plywood, and I stained it on the back, and then in the front I only stained the perimeter because I am going to, the water part, it's already glued to a backer board that is stained, and this whole thing is going to get glued inside here. So that's the way I decided I will go about it, because I already glued this to the water, the backer board to the water, before I decided I wanted to put a frame. So the backer board is too small, I can't just fit it into a frame, and I didn't want to cover any of the design because the flag comes all the way to the top and I didn't want to lose any of the water. So that's why I put this, I hope it makes sense, I put this backer board into the frame, and this is going to get glued to the backer board. For the frame, not only, it's 1.5 inches wide, but then I put a chamfer on the inside, and I think that is going to look pretty with this. So let's see. I'm not sure if I should glue all the pieces to this stuff, or should I glue this to the back, to the frame first and then add the pieces. I feel like I should glue this to the frame, because in case it goes something wrong, that's the easiest one to redo. Now for the glue, I'll be using a mixture between CA glue and this quick and thick. So that's what I will be using to glue this piece down. Pretty nice. So far we have the backer board with the water into the frame. So this is the way the thing goes. Now I just have to glue it in place and hope that all works out. So I think I'll just place this in here and put some weight on it, and I'll see you when it's all dry for the finish. I almost forgot to film the finish. What I did for the finish is I first spray some of this lacquer on it just to lock in the stain, because if I would just put oil right here on the walnut where I put the stain, it will bleed out and spread on everything. So I put a layer of lacquer, and now I am going to just put the oil on top, because the stain is sealed in and it should not leach into everything. I'm just gonna work on the front side, and then after I wipe it off and it's dry and stuff, then I'm gonna do the sides and the back.